Rain beat down on the old stone walls, filling the courtyard with the sound of 1,000 tiny drums. Puddles formed in cracks and pooled around broken columns. Flickering torchlight danced on wet stones, casting long, trembling shadows. In the center of this gloomy space, a mother knelt, her clothes torn and muddy. Her dark hair clung to her face, dripping water down her cheeks. She pressed her hands together and stared up at the soldier before her. "Punish me," she cried, her voice shaking. "But spare my son. Take my life, not his." The soldier stood tall and still. His armor was scratched and stained with mud, but it held strong against the rain. A long cloak, heavy with water, hung from his shoulders. He did not move his head. As thunder rolled across the sky, lightning lit his stern face for a moment, sharp jaw, cold eyes, lips pressed tight. He held a blade in one hand, the metal bright against the dark stones. The boy, the mother's son, huddled behind her, shackled by his wrists and ankles. His small body trembled with fear. Each breath the boy took was loud in the silence between raindrops. He stared at the soldier's blade. The torchlight caught the steel's edge and sent a thin line of fire dancing across the courtyard floor. The boy's heart pounded like a drum. He glanced at his mother, tears mixing with the mud on her cheeks. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled too much. Even in her fear, she put herself between him and the soldier. The soldier finally spoke. His voice was flat, like a stone meeting another stone. "You broke our laws," he said. "You are guilty of a crime we cannot forgive." He lifted the blade slowly. Water dripped from the hilt. The mother's breath caught. She closed her eyes and bowed her head harder. She waited for the blow, but the soldier did not strike. He paused, the blade's point hovering above the stones. His fingertips tightened around the hilt, but his arm did not fall. The boy's eyes widened. He looked from the mother to the soldier's face. The torchlight flickered, making the soldier's eyes glow for a heartbeat. Then the lightning flashed again, and the courtyard went dark. Rain hid everything but the sound of water and wind. In the darkness, the soldier lowered his blade until it pointed at the stones again. He tilted his head as if listening to something far away. Rain pattered against his helmet, but he did not move. The mother dared to lift her head. She gasped when she saw the sword drop. Its tip struck the whetstone with a loud clang. The boy stumbled forward in his chains. "Why do you hesitate?" the mother whispered, though thunder swallowed her words. She opened her eyes and met the soldier's gaze. In that stormlit space, his eyes looked different. They were not empty, they were full of memory. He was silent, but his face spoke of pain. The mother stood shakily and took a step forward. She knew every second brought her closer to loss. Footsteps rang out from the shadowed archway at the courtyard's edge, heavy and hurried. More soldiers, their armor clanking, appeared in pairs behind flaming torches. They formed a line behind the kneeling mother and locked onto the soldier with cold eyes. The captain of the guard, a tall woman with a scar across her cheek, stepped forward. She barked an order that carried through the rain. "Proceed!" The soldier glanced at the new arrivals. His gaze drifted back to the mother and child. "Atu." Drop of water slid from his eyelid down his cheek. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. The crack of lightning lit the courtyard again, revealing the captain's sword raised high. He felt the mother's soft sobs, heard the boy's sharp intake of breath. But he did not move his sword. He did not step back. He stood perfectly still. As the captain raised her blade, the rain froze for a moment, as if the sky itself held its breath. Then thunder shook the walls. The soldier's cloak whipped around him. His hand tightened on the sword's hilt. And then, without warning, the guards behind the captain fell silent. The torches flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the courtyard. The only sound was the rain. The mother gasped, and the boy whimpered. The soldier's blade glinted as he lifted it once more. His face was calm, his eyes were empty, but his heart raced. No one knew why the torches died or why the captain lowered her sword. In the pitch black, the soldier was alone with the mother and child. The courtyard felt endless, as if the rain and walls had no end. He raised the blade high and held it there. The mother closed her eyes and prayed. The boy's tears mixed with the rain on the stones. Then, cutting through the roar of the storm, a sound came from above, a low hum of power. A strange light glowed in the sky beyond the broken wall. The soldier raised his head. The mother opened her eyes, her breath held hostage. The boy pressed closer to her. All three stared at the light, waiting. What would it mean? And could it change the fate they feared was sealed? A dull gray dawn crept over the ruined city walls, turning broken towers into jagged silhouettes against the sky. In the chill air, the soldier walked alone along a narrow alley. His heavy boots echoed on wet stones. The rain had stopped, but pools of water still lay in the cracks. He paused beneath an iron grate and stared at a faded mural on the wall. Yellowed paint showed an ancient promise: protect the weak. He touched the words lightly, as if they were carved into his skin. His breath came in soft huffs from beneath his helmet. He remembered the day he took his oath. Young and eager, he had stood before his commander under a bright sun. Other recruits marched in perfect lines around him. The commander's voices had been loud and proud. When his turn came, he raised his right hand and swore to defend life even against his own fears. By my honor, he had said, I will stand for the lost and the helpless. That memory flickered like the murals. Paint, now dust, clung to his armor, and blood had long stained his blade. His oath felt like a distant echo. He lowered his head and touched the hilt. Suddenly, a soft cry reached his ears. He turned and saw the boy from the courtyard, hidden behind a broken doorway. His small face was pale, eyes wide with fear. The child held one hand to his chest, as if to still his trembling heart. Rainwater dripped from his hair, though the storm had passed. The soldier's heart clenched. He crouched and beckoned the boy forward. It's safe, he whispered, voice low and calm. The boy stepped out, legs shaking. Chains hung from his wrists, but the soldier had no keys. He studied the links with a practiced eye. Tell me again why they took you, the soldier said. He watched the child swallow hard. The boy's lips parted, then closed. He looked down at his feet. They said I saw the Queen's secret, the boy stammered. They said I heard her talk to the stars. The soldier felt a cold knot in his chest. The alien Queen's name was spoken only in whispers. Her realm was hidden beyond the nebula, her power feared by every world. To hear her voice was said to be impossible. Yet this child claimed it. Why did you hide? The soldier asked. The boy's eyes filled with tears. I was scared. They wanted to kill me after they learned the truth. He gulped. I ran. The soldier nodded. He pulled a fold of cloth from his pack and wiped the boy's tears. You did right. He stood and surveyed the alley. Mist curled around broken beams and shattered doors. Somewhere far off, church bells tolled. Memories of his own daughter. Surfaced her bright laugh, her tiny hand in his. He had left her with promises. I will return. Yet each mission took him farther away. He had missed her birthday. He had missed her first step. He carried guilt like an iron chain. He knelt again and bowed his head. I swore to protect the helpless. His voice was soft but steady. The boy peered at him, hope and fear mingling. In his gaze, the soldier rose. He closed his eyes for a moment and recalled the exact words of his oath. The wind stirred, and he felt the past brush against him like a ghost. When he opened his eyes, they burned with new resolve. Come with me, he said, extending a hand. The chains glinted in the pale light. He scanned the boy's bonds and spotted a loose link. With a quick tug, the metal snapped. The boy gasped as freedom touched his arms. They walked side by side. Through the silent streets, each step stirring old dust and fresh hope. The soldier kept his eyes forward, as if searching the sky for signs. The boy glanced at him frequently, curiosity overtaking fear. "Who are you?" the boy asked at last, voice small. The soldier paused on a shattered bridge overlooking a dark river. He looked at the boy and then out at the water. "I am just a man," he replied, "a man who remembers a promise." He touched the mural words scratched on his memory. "Protect the weak." The boy nodded and lowered his head. He touched the soldier's hand, gripping it tight. The soldier felt warmth spread through his armor. Behind them, a distant rumble shook the stones. They both turned toward the sound. Smoke curled over the city walls. Figures moved in the haze, armored riders, their banners still flying, even in ruin. The soldier gripped his blade. "They found us," he said. "They want you back." His voice was calm, but his pulse thundered. The boy's eyes widened. He took a step back. Will you fight them?" The soldier looked down at the child, then at the broken sword in his hand. He drew it from the scabbard and held it at rest. Lightning cracked across the sky. "I will," he said. "I will keep my oath." The riders charged, hooves striking stone like thunder. The boy stepped close, clutching the soldier's cloak. The soldier bent and whispered to him, "Stay behind me." As the first rider leaped the bridge's broken rail, the soldier lifted his blade. His cloak snapped in the wind. His voice rose in a steady shout. For her safety and for all the helpless, stand clear. Rain began to fall again, as if the storm had never left. The soldier's eyes glowed with purpose. The boy watched, awe and fear melding in his chest. Above them, the mural's promise faded in the rain, but in the soldier's heart, it burned brighter than ever. Asterisk morning light filtered through narrow slits in the prison wall, casting thin stripes of sun and shadow across the cold stones. Courtyard's rainwater had dried, but a thin mist clung to every surface. In the center, guards marched the mother forward with her hands bound behind her back. Her face was drawn tight with fear, but her step stayed steady. Behind her, the boy shuffled in chains, his head lowered to hide his tears. They passed under a carved stone arch into a circular chamber. The judges' benches rose in tiers, like seats in an ancient arena. Soldiers in bright armor formed a ring around the edges. At the far end, 3 magistrates sat behind a carved desk of black wood. Their robes were plain, but their eyes were sharp and cold. No one spoke as the mother was pushed to her knees before them. The boy watched from the shadow of the doorway, his heart pounding. The chief magistrate, a tall man with silver hair and thin lips, leaned forward. His voice echoed in the hush. "You stand accused of crimes against the realm," he said. "Your son witnessed what he should not have seen. He heard what he should not have heard." The mother's mouth opened, but no sound came. The magistrate's eyes flicked to the boy. "Child, speak plainly. Describe what you saw." The boy shivered. He glanced at his mother, who gave him a tiny nod. He straightened and forced his voice out. "I saw the Queen's envoy. He spoke words, not in our tongue. He spoke to the stars." A gasp ran through the guards. The Queen's envoy was legend, a pale figure who traveled the void, between worlds to carry messages only the Queen herself knew. No mortal was meant to hear his voice. The second magistrate, a woman with a scar across her brow, stood and pointed at the boy. "You confessed to treason by association. The mother harbored this traitor and let him listen." The mother's chest heaved. "It is not treason to learn truth," she said. Her voice was low but steady. "He did not act against the realm." The third magistrate, a young man with hard eyes, tapped a hammer on the desk. "Silence. The law does not care for intentions. You are guilty. The mother's face went pale. She stared at the judges, then at her son. Tears welled in his eyes. He whispered, "Mother." But no one heard. Guards seized the mother's arms and dragged her away. Her chains clanked. She turned once, looking toward her son. Her eyes begged him to be strong. He dropped his head as she vanished behind closed doors. Alone in the corridor, the boy waited. Footsteps approached. A guard in dull armor unlocked his chains. The cell door creaked open behind him. A narrow beam of light fell on the stone floor. The guard said nothing. He handed the boy a thin blanket and gestured for him to stand. The boy picked up the blanket, wrapping it around his shoulders like a cloak. He followed the guard down a winding passage. Torches blazed, making the shadows dance. At the end of the passage, they reached a small chamber lit by one lantern. A table sat in the center with a single chair on each side. The guard motioned for the boy to sit. The boy climbed onto the wooden chair, clutching the blanket tight. A heavy door opened. A man in dark robes entered. His hood hid most of his face, but the boy saw pale skin and eyes like white fire. The man's lips moved in a whisper the boy could not catch. He felt a tremor in his mind, as if the man's voice had brushed against his thoughts. "You listened," the envoy said, voice soft but full of power. "You heard what no child must hear." The boy swallowed. His pulse hammered. I did," he stammered. He spoke of worlds beyond the nebula, of stars that burn with living light. The envoy nodded, folding his hands. "And what will you do with this knowledge?" The boy closed his eyes. I do not know." The envoy leaned forward. "Knowledge is a burden. For holding it, you and your mother face death." He paused, then stood. "But you may earn mercy. Swear silence. Swear you will never speak of what you heard." The boy looked down at his feet. He thought of his mother in chains, of the judges' cold eyes. He thought of the envoy's pale face. He pressed his lips together, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I swear," he whispered. The envoy turned to the guard. "Take him back." Chains were fastened again around the boy's wrists. As the guard led him away, the envoy's voice followed him through the door. "Remember silence, or the Queen's wrath spares no one." The boy walked down the dark corridor, fear and relief warring in his chest. He reached his mother's cell and paused at the door. She sat on the floor, her head bowed. When she saw him, she offered a small, sad smile. He held up his shackled hands. "I swore," he said softly. She touched his face gently. "Your heart is good," she whispered. "We will find a way." But in the shadows beyond the torchlight, two pairs of eyes watched them. "The boy knows," one guard said quietly. "And now we must decide," the other guard replied. "Mercy or silence by any means." A cold wind blew through the hallway as the torches flickered. Behind closed doors, the jailer's keys rattled, and the fate of mother and child hung in the balance. The hallway outside the cells was cold and silent. Flickering torches cast dancing shadows on damp stones. The soldier paused at the iron door of the mother's cell. He heard her quiet sobs behind the bars. In his gloved hand, he held a small set of keys, the final choice resting in his palm. Memories rushed through him. The day he pledged his life to protect the weak. The mother's plea in the courtyard, the boy's frightened eyes. He recalled the oath word for word, spoken under a blazing sun before a cheering crowd of comrades. "By my honor, I shall shield the helpless, even at the cost of my own life." That promise weighed heavy now. He knelt before the door and slipped the largest key into the lock. Metal clicked softly. The latch fell. He drew a slow breath and pushed the door open. Inside, the mother sat on the cold floor, knees drawn to her chest. Her face was wet with tears. When the door creaked, she looked up. Fear filled her eyes until she saw the soldier's wet cloak and bowed head. He reached through the bars and unlocked her shackles. The chains fell to the ground with a sharp clatter. The mother rubbed her sore wrists and stood, her head still bowed. Behind her, the boy pressed his back against the far wall, arms still bound. "Take him," the soldier said quietly. He held out his hand. The mother hesitated. Fear and doubt flickered across her face. "We must go now," he urged. Glancing down the corridor, 2 guards patrolled at the far end, their armor gleaming in torchlight. "They will kill you both at dawn." She stepped forward and slipped her hand into his. Her grip was weak but determined. He turned and moved toward the boy's cell. At the door, he paused again. The boy looked up, eyes wide. "Soldier," he whispered, will you free me too?" The soldier knelt and unlocked the chains around the boy's ankles. The child rubbed his ankles and stood slowly. The soldier pressed the boy's shoulder gently. "Stay close," he said. Together, the 3 moved down the corridor. Each step echoed like a warning. As they passed under a stone arch, the soldier froze. Voices drifted from a side chamber, a group of guards discussing the mother's fate. "They'll do the execution at dawn," one guard said. "No mercy." "A shame," another replied. "But the law is the law." The soldier gripped, his sword hilt beneath his cloak. His breath hitched as he weighed his orders against his oath. If he fled with them now, he would be a traitor. His reputation, his rank, even his life, everything would be forfeit. But if he left them to die, his oath would be broken forever. He glanced at the mother, whose face was pale but resolute. The boy looked to him with hope shining in his young eyes. In that moment, the soldier felt the full weight of choice. A sudden shout rang out. "Stop them!" A guard dashed into the hallway, spear raised. The mother screamed. The boy froze. The soldier stepped between them. His cloak flapped as he drew his sword in one smooth motion. The blade gleamed under torchlight. He stood tall, chest forward. Behind him, the mother and child huddled close. The guard skidded to a halt, surprise in his eyes. "Soldier, by command of the captain, I order you to stand down and surrender those prisoners." The soldier's jaw clenched. He lifted his sword until its tip pointed at the guard's throat. His voice was low but firm. "I will not obey that order." The guard's lips twisted in confusion. He glanced back down the corridor at his comrades, who were rushing forward. "You're under arrest yourself," the mother cried out. "No!" She grabbed the soldier's arm as if to hold him back. But he only steadied his sword. Lightning flickered through a narrow window at the corridor's end, lighting the soldier's stern face. Rain began to patter on the stones far above, as if the storm had returned. The guard hesitated, torn between duty and fear. The soldier steadied his breathing and met the guard's gaze. "My duty is to protect them," he said, "not to kill the innocent." A thunderous crash echoed as rainwater flooded through broken masonry above the window. Water splashed onto the corridor floor, and torch flames quivered. The guard's grip on his spear loosened. In that instant, the soldier made his choice. He lowered his sword and stepped back. "Run now," he ordered the mother and boy. They hesitated only a moment before sprinting down the corridor toward freedom. The soldier turned to face the advancing guards, charging toward him with spears and swords. He tucked his sword under one arm and pulled the large keyring from his belt, letting it fall clatter to the floor. Behind him, metal met stone as the guards attacked. The soldier raised his arms to block the blows. Each strike rang through the hallway like iron bells. Yet in his heart, he felt peace's choice made. His oath kept far ahead. The mother and child rounded a corner and vanished into the darkness. Water dripped from the ceiling, mingling with their tears of relief. Behind them, the soldier's voice rang out, for her safety and for all who cannot protect themselves. His shout faded into clashing steel and the roar of a new storm. But in the mother's mind, those words shone like hope itself. They ran faster, trusting that one man's choice could change their destiny and perhaps the fate of their world. A pale moon rose over the fortress walls, its light silvering the broken stones. The wet ground glowed under the stars as a hush fell over the corridors. Inside, the mother and boy pressed themselves against a damp wall in a narrow passage. Their breath came in quiet gasps. Behind them, the soldier crept forward, every step careful and slow. He carried no torch, only the faint glow of moonlight on his sword's blade. His armor was slick with water from earlier rain, but he moved without a sound. His cloak hung low, hiding the mother's small bundle of blankets and the broken keyring he had left behind. He glanced back once to be sure they followed. The boy's eyes were wide, shining with fear and hope both. The mother gripped the boy's hand tightly, her arm trembling. They reached a set of iron bars closing off a side window. Beyond, the courtyard lay silent. Torch flames flickered in shadowed corners, but the gate stood unguarded, at least for the moment. The soldier pressed his ear to the bars and heard footsteps echoing far down the hall. He tapped the mother's shoulder and pointed to two loose stones at the base of the wall. "Move them," he whispered. Together, the mother and boy pushed aside the stones to reveal a rusted hatch. The soldier knelt, slipping his blade's tip into the lock's crevice. The metal was stiff, but the rain had loosened its hinges. With a gentle twist and a soft click, the hatch opened outward. A rush of cool night air brushed their faces. "Be ready," the soldier said. "As soon as we're through, run to the woods. Don't look back." The mother nodded. She scooped up the boy and slipped through the hatch first. The soldier followed last, pulling the iron door closed behind him. The sound was muffled but final. They crouched low and hurried across the courtyard floor. Each footstep kicked up tiny plumes of mist. The boy froze at the sight of a guard's torchlight rounding a corner. The mother pressed him down behind a shattered column. The soldier melted into the shadows. The guard's heavy footfalls grew louder. He paused, studying the empty hatch, then walked on. The torch swayed as he passed, briefly lighting the soldiers. Grim face. When the guard disappeared, the soldier beckoned. They dashed across the courtyard toward the gate at its far end. The moon guided their path, silver beams trailing behind their forms. As they neared, the gate's iron bars yawned open, the bolt left loose by someone who believed no one would escape. The soldier pushed the gate the rest of the way and slipped through, then paused to help the mother. She swallowed hard but moved steadily. The boy tumbled through, landing in soft grass just outside the walls. The soldier cleared the bar and dropped down beside them. They rose and ran toward the dark forest beyond the fortress. Trees loomed like silent sentinels, shadows reaching to pull them in. The mother and boy ran barefoot, clothes damp but spirits high. Behind them, a distant cry rose, a soldier's shout, surprised and angry. The boy stumbled over a root. The mother caught him, lifting him in her arms as they flew through the underbrush. The soldier ran beside them, sword drawn now, ready to defend. Moonlight danced on his blade as he scanned the tree line. Branches snapped in the distance, pursuers drawing near. The mother pressed the boy close, rocking him gently. He whimpered but held tight to her neck. The soldier stopped at the forest's edge, dark shapes weaving between trees. He bowed his head to the ground and whispered a single word, "Go." The mother hesitated, only a heartbeat, tears in her eyes. Then she turned and vanished into the trees, the boy's soft sobs swallowed by the night. The soldier stepped into the open, facing the coming chase. Riders burst from the woods like wolves from den. Their horses' eyes gleamed, hooves pounding. Wet earth. Spears and swords glinted in torchlight. The soldier raised his blade. His cloak snapped around him in the wind. Metal rang as he met them at the forest border. He fought with steady skill, each strike calculated to slow, not kill. The riders drew back when his blade sang. He kicked at horse flanks, unseating 2 pursuers who crashed into the mud. He turned and charged another, the cold steel finding the weak joint of armor. Above the clash, the boy's cries echoed faintly from deeper in the forest. The soldier's heart tightened. He parried a spear thrust and stamped his foot, sending mud spraying. His eyes blazed. Then, through the trees, a pale light broke the dark, swift and bright. A humming thrummed through the air. The pursuers lowered their weapons, startled. The soldier shielded his eyes as the light approached, glimmering like starlight made solid. A silent vessel hovered above the treetops. Its shape was unlike any craft of the realm's smooth curves, glowing seams. A beam extended downward, illuminating the clearing. The riders crouched, trembling. The soldier stood alone in its path, sword raised defiantly. A hatch opened in the vessel's hull. A figure stepped out, wrapped in flowing robes that shimmered silver, the envoy of the queen. His presence turned the forest cold and still. The soldier dropped his sword, dropping to one knee. Behind him, the riders knelt too, fear in their eyes. The envoy's voice filled the clearing. It was soft, yet it echoed in every leaf and stone. Enough. He turned to the soldier. You have honored your oath. Then he spoke to the forest itself. Release them. Far off, the mother and boy stumbled into a moonlit glade. The envoy's beam swept over them, lifting them gently from the ground. They rose weightless and floated toward the ship. The soldier watched until they disappeared into the light. Then he bowed his head, sword in hand, alone but at peace. The forest sighed behind him as the vessel ascended, carrying hope from the darkest night. Dawn's pale light crept into the grand hall, where towering pillars held aloft a high carved ceiling. The air smelled of cold stone and old incense. At the far end of the hall, a raised dais held a silver throne. Upon it sat Commander Varen, her armor polished to a harsh shine. Her eyes were steely, and a cruel smile curved her lips. The mother and boy were brought forward, hands bound behind their backs. Soldiers formed a wide circle around them, their spears lowered but ready. The boy's small feet dragged in the dust as he stumbled beside his mother. She kept her head high, though her heart pounded like a drum. Commander Varen rose from her throne. Her cloak swept the floor, and her voice rang out clear and cold. You dare defy the realm, she said, looking first at the mother, then at the boy. You know the punishment for treason. The mother swallowed. She felt the boy's small hand slip into her own. My lord, she began, voice soft but firm, my son is only a child. He did not plan to betray anyone. Varen's smile grew thinner. A child who hears the queen's secrets is no longer innocent. She turned to the soldiers. Seize the mother. 2 guards stepped forward. The mother braced herself, but the soldier, her savior, rushed into the hall, sword drawn. He stood between the guards and the mother. The soldiers' spears clicked as they raised them. The boy gasped. Please, he cried. Spare her. Commander Varen frowned at the interruption. Soldier of the guard, she said, you broke your oath. You free traitors while wearing our colors. The soldier clenched his jaw. He held his blade at rest across his arm. My oath was to protect the helpless, he said. Not to serve cruelty. A whisper ran through the hall. Soldiers shifted uneasily. Commander Varen lifted a hand. You will kneel, she ordered the soldier, or you will die with them. The soldier's cloak rustled as he stood firm. I will not kneel, he replied. His voice echoed on the stone walls. Varen's smile vanished. She raised her hand, and her guards lowered their spears. The boy squeezed his mother's hand. Tears ran down his cheeks, but he held back his sobs. Commander Varen tapped her sword's pommel on the dais. So be it. She turned to the executioner waiting at the dais's edge. Prepare the laser. Gates. The hall's lights dimmed. 4 beams of blue energy shimmered around a circular platform in the center. The mother and boy were herded onto it. The soldier watched, dread coiling in his chest. The mother looked at her son. Her eyes were fierce with love. "Remember," she whispered, "even in darkness hope shines." The boy nodded, brave despite his fear. The executioner activated the controls. The beams hummed and glowed brighter. A soft wind blew through the hall, lifting loose cloaks and silencing the murmurs. Commander Varen stepped off her dais and walked slowly toward the platform. With each step, her boots echoed like rolling thunder. She stopped before the mother. "You begged for life," she said quietly, "but did you beg enough?" The mother's lips quivered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Varen reached out and pressed a button on her sword hilt. 2 beams of light shot from the pommel and struck the mother's chest. She fell to her knees, but her eyes stayed on her son. The boy shrieked and lunged forward, chains dragging behind him. Commander Varen raised her hand, and 2 guards held him back. The boy struggled, tears and fear burning in his eyes. The soldier charged across the hall. He struck aside a guard's spear, then kicked the other guard to the floor. His blade sang as he swung it toward Varen. She twisted out of reach, and the soldier's sword gouged a scar in the floor. Varen's eyes flashed with anger. She raised her sword, and a pulse of energy burst from its tip, igniting the laser gates. The beams flared white and cut through the platform. The mother cried out as light enveloped her. Her final look was one of love and farewell. The boy screamed a sound that rent the air. The soldier caught him in his arms. Tears fell down both their faces. The halls trembled as the beams vanished, leaving only dust and silence. Commander Varen stood above them, sword lowered. Her face was hard. "Mercy is weakness," she said. "Remember that." The soldier glared up, chest heaving. "Mercy is strength," he replied, voice fierce. "It makes us human." Varen laughed cold and hollow. "Your kind will learn otherwise." She turned and strode back to her dais. Soldiers fell into formation around her, swords drawn but pointed down. The soldier held the boy close. The child's sobs shook his small body. The soldier whispered in his ear, "I will make this right." The boy looked up, eyes red but determined. "Promise?" The soldier nodded. "I promise." Commander Varen watched from above, her cloak billowing. The hall fell silent again, but a storm raged in the soldier's heart. He had saved the boy, but the mother was gone. His choice had sealed their fate and set him on a path that would test the true meaning of mercy. Asterisk night had fallen again. But the sky was different now, alive with distant stars that seemed to glow more brightly than ever. The forest clearing lay quiet, except for the soft rustle of leaves and a gentle breeze. The soldier stood at the edge of a circle of broken branches and crushed grass, holding the boy close. His sword hung at his side, its blade dull in the moonlight. The boy looked up at him, eyes red but shining with hope. "Will she be all right?" he whispered, voice trembling. The soldier stroked the boy's damp hair and forced a small smile. "She is safe," he said. "The Queen's envoy took her aboard his ship. He will care for her." The boy nodded, wrapping his arms tightly around the soldier's waist. He shivered in his thin cloak. The soldier looked to the sky, where a faint glow marked the envoy's vessel drifting among the stars. Its soft hum seemed to whisper across the treetops. Footsteps crackled in the underbrush behind them. The soldier drew his sword, blade flashing. In the moonlight, he turned swiftly to face the sound, protecting the boy even now. A figure emerged, the envoy himself, robes swirling like mist around pale legs. He moved without a sound, stepping into the clearing with quiet grace. The boy let go of the soldier and stood between them, eyes wide. The envoy spoke, voice like wind over water. "You have done well," he said, glancing at the soldier. You kept your promise. The soldier bowed his head. I only did what I swore. The envoy looked down at the boy. And you kept silent as you swore, he said gently. The boy nodded, still trembling. The envoy raised his right hand. A soft glow spread from his palm to the boy's forehead. The boy's eyes fluttered closed. When he opened them again, they held calm wonder. The envoy laid a finger to his lips. I erase your chains from memory. No one will remember your crime. The boy smiled, freedom shining in his face. He ran to the soldier and hugged him fiercely. The soldier returned the embrace, tears slipping down his cheeks. Suddenly, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The moon slipped behind a cloud, and darkness fell again. The envoy turned to the soldier, his pale eyes reflecting moonlight. But what of you? The envoy asked. You risked all for them. What will you lose? The soldier straightened. He looked at the boy, now free of fear, then back at the envoy. I've already lost much, he said quietly. My honor, my rank, my home. He clenched his fist. Yet I gained what matters. A mother's thank you in her last breath, a child's trust, and the promise I kept. The envoy nodded slowly. Your heart is true, he said. No law, no rank can change that. The queen sees your value. He raised his hand again, and a ribbon of silver light coiled around the soldier's wrist. This mark is a gift proof that you serve a higher law. The soldier watched as the light faded into his skin, leaving a faint star-shaped scar. He touched it in wonder. Return to your world, the envoy continued, and choose your path. You are free. The soldier knelt before the boy. I will take you home, he said softly. The boy's face lit up. The forest glade brightened as the envoy stepped back and raised his arm. The ship's beam shone down, painting a pale circle on the ground. The mother emerged first, clad in silver robes that gleamed like moonlight. She reached out to her son, tears of joy in her eyes. He ran into her arms. The soldier stood, watching them. The mother hugged him tightly. Thank you, she whispered. You gave us life. He bowed his head. I only kept my word. They climbed into the light together. The boy waved as they rose. The soldier watched until they were gone, mother and child, safe beyond the stars. Silence fell. The envoy stood beside him, his shape fading like mist at dawn. Go, he said, voice echoing softly. Your story is not over. The soldier sheathed his sword and turned toward the forest path home. He felt the star-shaped scar on his wrist, warm as a promise. Above him, the sky pulsed with distant lights. In his heart, he carried a new truth, that mercy can be stronger than any law, and that a single choice can change the fate of many. He walked into the night, the echo of a mother's plea still in his mind, and the knowledge that a human heart could never be that cruel. Ask ChatGPT.